Fortunes are made and lost during recessions. Let's talk about how to be on the winning side with real estate. Let's address the elephant in the room. I'm not very old. I have started to get some grays, as my wife has lovingly pointed out, in my beard, but I got started in real estate back in 2014. I don't have a crystal ball and I didn't go through '08. So what I have been doing is talking to folks who did, learning from their experiences, and just really trying to use some wisdom when it comes to the money moves I'm making in 2025, rolling into 2026. You're probably going to hear me start to preach a lot more about margin, doing deals that make sense with multiple exit strategies, and that comes from a perspective of wanting to not only set myself up for failure, that comes wanting to set myself up for success and to also help you guys avoid failure. One of the first expressions I heard from somebody who's been in real estate for decades now at this point across various asset classes, from student housing to residential to, ground up new affordable housing developments, is back in 2008. It felt kind of like trying to catch a falling knife, right? If you're not familiar with that expression, where do you grab, right? Because we want to catch the handle, not the blade or the tip. What that means is that we don't necessarily know what a project is going to be worth a year, 2 years, or even 6 months from now. So we want to make sure that we have a lot of margin and multiple exit options. I've talked about this when it came to COVID, but that's the comps that existed when rates were 2% really no longer apply. I would go so far as to even say comps that closed a month or 2 months ago are less relevant than what is current competition on the market and what is that competition doing. Are places pending? The places that are pending, what do they look like? Are they nicer than your house? Are they worse than your place? Are they priced at or above where you're planning on pricing at? Or are they priced significantly below? Similarly, it's a really good idea to look at price drops. If we're planning on listing a place at, say, $300,000, but everything that started out at $300,000 is now being price dropped, well, we might want to rethink our pricing strategy. I would personally focus on smaller rehabs or tighter timelines than bigger projects or looser timelines. It's possible to get a full renovation done in a span of 4, 6, 8 weeks if you're scheduled and dialed out to the day versus I'll kind of figure it out as we go with a project that's going to take 6 months. During a recession where we don't necessarily know what places are going to be worth 6 months from now, we'd better have a lot of margin. The second piece of advice I've been given is to focus on recession-resistant plays when it comes to real estate investing. So what does that mean? I wouldn't just count on the resell. I would plan to be able to hold that property as well. My private lenders, that's how they decide if they want to be involved in projects I'm doing or not. Can this place cash flow if we have to do that with it? Or is the only way we make money if we're able to flip it or sell it for more than what we paid? You might look at things like doing conventional rentals. Hey, would this place cash flow if we put a family in there on a 30-day lease? I think properties with ADUs or multiple ADUs or even duplexes, triplexes, and quads, we're going to see an increase in appeal and demand for, right? If I have a single family and it goes vacant, I'm making no money, versus if I have a quad and I have one unit go vacant, well, I'm still getting 3/4 of what I was collecting. I think you're going to see an uptick. In fact, I've already seen atrocious content from some gurus on Section 8 or government-backed rental type programs. That feels very safe for folks in a time where income might become questionable or shaky. It's a little bit newer to the scene, but you might consider checking out something like pad split or other co-living arrangements. If we're in a place where folks are having a hard time making ends meet, it's likely that they might live with roommates. They've got to go somewhere and they might prefer to be in a house, even if it's in a co-living sort of an arrangement, but that might be a safer option for you versus just a single family on a conventional rental, depending on your market. One of the guys that's in CCF, I think at this point is well over 1,000 units in the mobile home park space. And I've heard from him, It's about the most affordable housing you can get outside of like camping in a tent. So that's an asset class that you might consider getting into as well. The big thing that I think really is important in a recession is liquidity and debt service coverage ratio, which I'm going to explain in point number 3. Debt service coverage ratio is the relationship between what a property makes after its expenses prior to paying its debts. It's how banks look at properties and even companies to determine if it's a good fit or not. If a property has a 1-to-1 debt service coverage ratio, that means after all expenses, it makes, say, $1,000 and its debt is $1,000. It can just cover its expenses. Most banks, in my experience, look for a higher than a 1-to-1 ratio. If you're below a 1-to-1 ratio, it means you have to put money into the business or into the property every month in order to meet its financial obligations. Now, a lot of folks make the mistake of assuming, well, if I'm getting $1,250 in rent and my mortgage is $1,000, that means that I'm cash flowing $250,000 a month, and I would be at like a 1.25% debt service coverage ratio. That would be incorrect. That's not a debt service coverage ratio. That's a rent to cost ratio. The more accurate way this is looked at is what is your net operating income, or the total amount of money you have left over after paying your expenses divided by what your debt would be. Your goal going into investment properties that you might need to hold would be that they have a very sexy debt service coverage ratio, meaning it should easily cash flow and cover all of its expenses when it's leased without you having to kick cash in. Now, it's also super important that you keep reserves and liquidity on hand, right? If you have a major repair, like say you need a roof, where's that going to come from? In a challenging real estate market, margin is always going to be key. Having plenty of cushion, plenty of room, and multiple exit strategies is going to be way more fun than you hoping you set a record to break even. During any sort of an economic downturn, one of the things you're going to find is that banks are going to be less likely to lend or refinance, or might not be willing to at all. There were some periods during COVID where banks that we'd worked with were just like, hey, we're not offering that product right now. Oh, okay, cool. That's great. So what I would do with that from a proactive standpoint is I would lock in long-term debt early and often. I would be pretty hesitant to sign for a bunch of hard money loans at 10-2 or 12-3 or whatever with 1-year balloons, not knowing how I was going to make that happen. I would look for a banking product that's more of a purchase plus renovation into long-term debt, sort of an alternative. A fifth point I want to make, and again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can imagine things like Airbnbs, short or even mid-term rentals might struggle quite a bit, particularly if you're in a tourism heavy area or you're counting on people like spending extra money that they wouldn't normally spend, or charging a premium due to like really cool amenities. It might be hard to fill Airbnb bookings. 2019 wasn't all that long ago, and I know a number of investors that really struggled or even sold places when moratoriums were in place and they literally couldn't rent their properties out. Now, devil's advocate, if you've designed a really cool space, you might be able to command a premium on that through something like pad split, assuming you're in a location that's not just tourism heavy. Like you might struggle more in like Joshua Tree, California versus Austin, Texas. The sixth point I would make if we're heading into a recession is I wouldn't want to be sitting on a ton of inventory. My rule of thumb is if I'm not getting showings, well, I either need to redo my pictures, consider staging, or I need to reduce my price. If I'm getting consistent showings and I've recently listed or reduced price, I'm going to sit firm for a little bit and see if it sells. But if I'm not getting offers, or if I start to see a decline in showings, I'm going to further reduce until that home sells. If you're in a position that you have a bunch of inventory sitting, I wouldn't anticipate on rates dropping to 2% and people killing themselves to try to buy your house from you at the inflated price you're probably asking for it. Might be time to have an honest look at the P&L and decide, what do we want to get out of this? Or is this just a, cut our losses and move on situation to bigger and better deals? Some of you guys are sitting on like the equivalent of a Range Rover of a house, hoping that it's going to go up in value when they really don't. The kind of last flag that I want to throw out here is that if you're in a city or town that is very reliant on one particular industry. Now, where we're headed, I think military towns will probably continue to do just fine, although I have seen some things come out about them moving folks in the military less often. I've seen a call for up to like a 50% reduction in PCS moves. But if you're in a town that's like run by one factory or tech or one particular industry, I would be pretty conservative. In the event that there's a decline, you don't want to be the guy buying tons of properties in a manufacturing town right before that manufacturer pulls out. Whether we're in a recession or headed into one or not going to have one at all, now is not a time that I would be buying thin, skinny margin deals. If you're having to sell yourself on buying a property, it's probably a place that you don't want to buy. I'm going to throw up a clip that I debated using, but I fly paragliders. And the other day I went to go fly. I drove like an hour there. I was excited. I wanted to go jump off a cliff, right? Ready to go. And I got there and the wind was a little strong. And I decided, now might not be safe for me to fly. As I was watching other people fly, I noticed people were trying to land and were not able to do so because the wind was too strong. In paragliding, you can have this thing where if the wind's strong enough, you're not able to go forward at all. You're staying straight, likely going up or even potentially getting blown backwards, which is a very dangerous position to be in. I watched a gentleman attempting to get lower to land have effectively a near miss. His glider got flown all over the place, he got twisted around, and he almost had to throw his emergency parachute. The lesson in that is sometimes the best deal you do is the one you decide not to do. You really can't unbuy a house after you've bought it. You can't unjump off a cliff with a paraglider once you've done it. And honestly, I would advise wisdom and caution. If you don't have multiple exit strategies or tons of margin, you need to be super careful. I also highly recommend that you surround yourself with other people that are doing the same thing as you in other markets, joining some sort of a mastermind group. If you're interested in CCF, you can go to ccfmastermind.com. I'd be honored to talk to you. I'm going to also throw out a couple others that you might consider in case I'm not a good fit or you don't like what we do. There's another great group run by a good friend of mine, Adam. It's 7-Figure Flipping. You might consider checking that out. Another good one is David Prey. A friend of mine runs the War Room, which from the guys that are in it, I'm not in it, but from the guys that are in it, I've heard it is the best community for active duty and retired folks in the military space. Another option would be Collective Genius, which is one of the larger mastermind groups out there. Whether it's my group or somebody else's, I highly recommend you get plugged in with other operators in the space. That way you're not figuring out challenges alone. Doing what you've always done has the ability to likely get you into trouble in the foreseeable future. Hopefully you found today's video helpful and maybe it gave you some pivots that you want to make. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe. If you wouldn't mind, if you have any questions or just want to tell me that you loved the video, drop any comments you have below. That helps us out on YouTube. But be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Talk to you guys next time.